Alright guys, welcome back. As we reach the end of this course, we will delve into the final topic, working with charts in VBA. There are two types of charts in VBA, which are chart objects. These are charts that reside within the worksheet. And then you have the chart sheets, which are basically separate sheets dedicated to charts. I'll show you that in a while. So if you're interested in creating your own charts from scratch, without the assistance of macros, I've come across a highly comprehensive cheat sheet which I found online. So I'm by no means a big fan of cheat sheets, but this is one cheat sheet that has pretty much everything covered for you to get going with VBA. So I highly recommend that you download them and to go through them whenever you have the time. So I'm just going to move to the chart section of this cheat sheet. And as you can see, it has all the details that you require for you to basically write your chart codes on VBA from scratch. So you have the section for referencing a chart object, looping through, right? Setting the source, okay? So the method to add chart to, right? And then you have how to set the size and positioning of the chart, okay? So this is one section that you should be familiar with, okay? Even if you are using the assistance of macro. So I'll explain that to you, right? You'll see examples. And then you are also able to add fields onto the chart, like hiding axis, displaying axis title, grid lines, deleting, and etc. Okay, so is that the right way to work with charts though? Well, the answer is no. Okay, while comprehensive resources like VBA cheat sheets can be very helpful, they often overlook the best practices of leveraging VBA's interactive capabilities with Excel. What I advocate is to use a methodical approach. Start by recording macros to generate the desired charts on Excel, and then refine and customize them as needed. Okay, so the approach is for you to leverage on Excel's native capability of recording macros. This method ensures efficient utilization of VBA by capturing and refining actions within Excel, rather than writing codes from scratch, right? So which can negate the inherent advantages of using VBA, right? So let's go through some practical problems, to illustrate this. So I'm just going to add some value on my freshly opened workbook. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So we have some range to get started with the chart. Okay, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Right? So it's a very simple table. So I'm just going to have a border wrapped around it. And maybe I'm just going to bold this, okay, to indicate that that's the header. So now I'm going to insert a chart. So I'm just going to insert a simple scatter line. Okay, I have to select the range. I'm going to select the range and then I'm going to insert the chart. Okay. For those of you who have been working with charts on Excel, I'm sure that you're very familiar with this. Now, this is the chart object. Okay, the first type of chart in Excel. And you also have the second type of chart, where if I could move this chart onto a new sheet. And now this chart sits on a separate sheet. This is the chart sheet. Okay, so generally most of the time though, we go with the first type of chart, which is the chart object. So now what I want to do is to record a macro of us generating a chart on Excel and then see how we can refine them. So what I want to do is to generate a macro for this chart and then basically refine on the macro so that when I click on the macro button, it should return me five charts of the same range. However, I want to change the chart title. So that they are unique. So meaning that I want the first chart to have the name chart 1, chart 2, chart 3, chart 4, and chart 5. Okay. So for that, I'm just going to pick the chart title from the worksheet. So I'm just going to say chart 1, chart 2, chart 3, chart 4, and then chart 5. Okay, so 5 charts, same data range, but different chart title. So right off the bat, I know that when I record my macro, I have to activate the fields that pertains to the chart. Okay, because I want to make the necessary amendments from there. So you have to activate the necessary fields that you want to work on in your VBA code. So suppose if you want to hide the grid lines, then you want to hide the grid line when you're generating the macro. So the associated properties of hiding the grid line is available on the macro. So you could use that for your code. Okay, so let's just record a macro now. Okay, let's record a macro. Let's not waste too much time. So macro 1, what I'm going to do is just select this range, insert. Okay, I'm not going to hide the grid line or anything. I'm just going to activate this so that the chart properties and method is activated on the VBA editor, and then I'm going to just name something like this. I don't care, or at least I'm going to change it later on. Now I'm done. So if you want to do something in the grid line, etc., data labels, okay, you can always invoke this. Okay, so that's up to you. For me, I'm okay with how the chart looks like. So I'm just going to stop recording. I'm going to go to the Visual Basic application, go to the modules to see what we have just done. So as you could see, Excel has a very, very tedious way of recording macros. For those of you, who have tried working with recording macros, you would notice, right, that it's just absolutely tedious. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remove. Okay, so I'm just going to write the steps here. Step 1, delete unnecessary codes. Okay, step 1. Just follow the steps that I'll be outlining to you in the future whenever you're working with charts. So I don't want all this. I don't want all this. All of this seems to be unnecessary. But I want something to do with the chart title text, right? This one I need it. Okay? This range, I don't need it. Step 2, improve on the code to make it more specific. So this active sheet, maybe I can name it sheet 1. Okay? To make it more specific. Okay, this range here, I don't like how this range is being referenced. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to set my own range. Okay, so in the future, if you are changing your range, this is one way you can do, right? So I'm just going to say dim RNG as range. Okay, and then I'm going to set RNG equals to sheet 1 dot range. So if you're combining with the last row, first row, whatever, right? This is the way for you to do it. Range A and maybe 2, right? Because I want to show you that you can make it entirely dynamic, right? So if you're looping in the future and the range is changing, this is what you do, right? So and B and 6. Okay. So if I debug, we have gone through this before in the previous lectures, right? On referencing ranges, right? And so I encourage you to go through them if you're not sure. Okay, so I'm just gonna see what address am I getting here. So I'm getting A2 to B6. Okay, so that's the range that I'm looking at, A2 to B6. Okay, so I'm gonna reset this. We don't need to run this yet. Now, what I want to do is the source here, this range here. I don't want this range here because it's not dynamic. I want to make it more dynamic. Okay, so I'm going to name this range because if you're looping or whatever it is, then we can add plus I, plus whatever, J, so you can make it more dynamic. That's what you should do. And I'm going to name this range dot address. Okay, so we're done. Now what I want to do is to have something that reflects the chart title to be more dynamic. So for that is I want to loop through the iteration first. Okay, so I'm going to create an iteration. Okay, step 3, create iteration. So dim I as long for I equals to 1 to 5 because we need 5 charts. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this inside the loop, doesn't matter. Okay, and then I'm just going to have next I, okay, to indicate we're out of the loop. Then you can also just use step 1. Okay, and then I want to change this chart title. Okay, I want to change it to the values that I've populated on the worksheet. So remember the range A, and what was it? Where did it start? 10. So it should be A and 9 plus I dot value. Okay, so we have covered the chart title. So what's next? Okay, if I run the macro, what's going to happen is you're going to see 5. We'll just delete this first. Okay, you're going to see 5 charts, but they're all going to be stacked on one to another. I don't want that, right? Because right now the position, they're all the same, right? So that's why I told you that you need to understand this section, how to set the positioning, how to get the positioning for each chart to be dynamic so that they have some separation. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say active chart. We're just going to use active chart dot parent dot left equals to 200 plus some x. Okay, so I'm just going to dim this x here. Okay, as long. Okay, and then I'm just going to set x equals to 0 in the beginning, and then as it goes through each iteration, the x value should increase by, I don't know, maybe 350, right? 350 is good. Okay, so I have that part done. So am I done with the chart? I think we are, right? So we have the I loop, we have set the range, right? I don't need this debug.print anymore. Okay, so I've changed the range to make it more dynamic, basically, right? Although in this case we don't need to be, we could have left the range as it was, but in the future, if you are looping through and you want to change the value of the range, then this is one way to do it. Okay, you can make it more dynamic. And then just change the chart title. Now I'm going to go back and run the macro. Look at that. I have 5 charts. I have 5 charts. Chart 1, chart 2, chart 3, chart 4, chart 5. Okay, so if you want to have those checkers kind of effect, right? You want to have chart 1 and chart 2, chart 3, chart 4. It should be like the first one here, second one down, third, and then for that checkers kind of effect. Then what you should do is actually you should use another for loop inside the for iteration, and to play around with the chart top positioning. Okay, so I'm okay with the way it looks here, right? So in case you want to have a different kind of layout, okay, that's one way for you to go around about it, right? So another loop, and then you can change the left and top positioning. That's required. But then there's one last thing that I wanted to fix the chart. That is, if I run the macro again, what's going to happen is that this chart, the 5 original charts, are not going to get deleted. Then I run a macro, I'm going to have 10 charts. Now I don't want that. Then I run again, I'm going to have 15 charts. I want, whenever that I delete the macro, when I rerun the macro, all the existing charts on the worksheet should get deleted. Okay, so this is one thing. Remember this code. Okay, if sheet 1 dot chart, I use this all the time. Okay, in my projects, dot count is greater than 1, then sheet 1 dot chart objects dot delete, then and if. Okay, so that's even before we enter the iteration. Okay, as soon as this macro runs, we're going to go and check this. So now if I just comment it out first, so I want to show to you that if I run the macro, I'm going to get 10 charts. You see, they're all stacked up. Okay, that's extremely inconvenient. So if I rerun the macro, it's going to delete everything and then just generate 5 charts. Okay, so I have not uncommented yet, so I'm going to uncomment it. And then I'm going to run the macro again, and you see we only have 5 charts. Okay, so that's the basics of how you play around with charts and modify the codes as necessary. Okay, so you'll go through a practice problem. I'll open the practice problem and get to you. So here's a practice problem. The task is, write a macro that allows users to select any range of cells from the table below to generate a pie chart. So this is a pie chart, not a line chart, through a series of 5 iterations. Ensure the title of the chart in all 5 iterations are in iterations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we've done the second part in the previous example. Okay, so we know how to do that. The first part though is different because now the range is not fixed. The range is based on what the user selected. Alright, so if you've been following my class from the beginning, right, you should know that this has something to do with the, you're right, input box. Okay, so I'm just going to name my iteration as what I did previously, from 1 to 5. Okay, so I've named them and then I'm going to pick the value during the iteration. So remember that whenever you record a macro, ensure to record the properties that you're interested in so that it's registered into the VBA editor and that you can make the necessary changes. So if you want to hide the grid line, make sure that you record an action that hides the grid line so that it goes into the VBA editor. Okay, so that way you have that properties in your code. Okay, so if you get what I mean. Now I need the chart title property. Okay, so that's why I'm going to have it activated. Okay, so I'm just going to go and record a macro, and we're just going to record a macro. Okay, now the macro is recording. I'm going to select a range. We're going to insert a pie chart. Okay, I'm going to invoke the chart title because I want to make sure that we have the chart title in the code editor, the properties basically. Okay, so that's about it. I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to go to the Visual Basic application, go into our modules, and as you could see, we see a lot of unnecessary lines of code. So I don't know what all of these are doing, right? So as I said, you have to clean up. First step, clean up everything, okay? And just, you can do it by inspection, okay? So I don't need all of this. Characters.text, I don't need this. And I don't need this as well, okay? Step 1, delete codes, delete unnecessary codes. We've done that. Step 2, make it more specific. Okay, so active sheet, I'm going to replace it with sheet 1. Okay, instead of active sheet, I want to have it as sheet 1. Then, step 3, we're just going to create the iteration. Step 3, create iterations. Okay, so I'm just going to dim I as long. For I equals to 1 to 5, and then I'm going to have next I. Okay, and it's a good practice to specify the step. We've done that. Next, we're going to make it dynamic. Okay, and what we have to make it dynamic: the range and the chart title. These two have to be dynamic. Okay, so I'm going to insert an input box, right? So I'm just going to declare this input box as variant type because it's going to be type 8. If you've watched my lecture, then I'm going to say set because we need the keyword set because it's type 8 range. Variant can be any variable, okay, but we're going to use the range type. Excel dot application dot input box. Okay, and then the first thing is prompt. What's the prompt? Enter a range. And then the type is going to be 8. Right? So we're done. So this range here, we don't want this range. What we want is the range that the user has selected. For that, we will delete this and then have it as range. Now we want to make this dynamic, though, right? So we're going to go and see, okay, iteration 1 to iteration 5. The first iteration starts on 24. So it should be sheet 1 dot range A and 23 plus I dot value. Okay, so we've done that as well. Next thing is we want to make sure the charts are not stacked onto one to another, right? We want an offset on the left, right? So for that, we're going to do active chart dot parent dot left equals to x plus 200. So initially it's going to be 200, then it's going to be x equals to x plus 350. So I'm going to dim x as well here. Dim x as long, and then x is just going to be 0 in the beginning, right? So we have done that. Now, remember when I went through this session on Excel input box, I told you that in case the user cancels the input box, right, in any of the iterations, because the user the input box is going to appear in all 5 iterations now. But in case the user hits cancel, we don't want it to run into a debug error. That's why we say on error, go to leave. Okay. Basically, what I'm saying is that if the user cancels the input box, we just end the sub and don't run into the debug error. So I'm going to have the leave right here. Okay. So I'm just going to say to account for cancellation of input box. So if you're not sure about input boxes, please go and refer to the lecture on VBA versus Excel input box. Okay. So we've done that. Now what's next is we have sorted the iteration section. Okay. Now we just have to ensure that when the macros run, we are not going to see the charts that exist previously, right? So that's why we want to delete all existing charts prior to running the codes, right? If you remember, chartObjects.count, right? ChartObjects.count greater than 1. Make sure you remember this. Then sheet 1 dot chart objects dot delete, and then I'm going to end it. Okay, so I think we are pretty much done. I hope I've not made any silly mistakes, right? So X has been declared, dim I has been declared, set on error go to leave. Sounds about right. Okay, so let's get on. So I'm going to delete this one that we created earlier. And then I'm just going to assign run the macro. Okay, so I'm going to enter a range. This is going to be my first range. Okay, now I can run the second range. Okay, it's giving me, so now I'm going to have the second range, this, and I'm going to hit control, and I'm going to have two non-continuous range. Okay, so it's giving me this. Third one, control, and then I'm going to have J and K. Fourth one, I'm going to have just the whole thing for the fourth one. And then the fifth one, I'm just going to have A, B, C, and then control, I, J, K. I click OK and look at it. Right? Remember the last one was IJK, ABC, and IJK. Iteration 4, iteration 2, iteration 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So now if I run the macro again, now I'm going to select a range. And then I cancel. Right? I cancel, I don't get the debug error, but everything that existed previously deleted. But now I only have one iteration. You can see that. Okay. So that is why I told you. The power of Excel is on its ability to record macros. So that's why record macros and then make the necessary amendments. Okay, so every programming language has its own strength. Okay, so sure, someone might tell you that some other programming languages have their vast collection of library. Well, I can tell you that VBA has the power to record macros, and if you know what you're doing, you can accomplish a lot with VBA. Right, so that sums up the course, our Excel VBA course. In the next session, we will be closing up with a wrap up, right, where I will be imparting you my closing statements. Right, I'll see you then. Take care.